Hello my fellow rail fans, the Chicago Rail Fan here, and welcome to the first episode of the Chicago Abandoned Railroad. This series will showcase the locations of the rail lines and stations that no longer exist. Keep in mind, some of these locations of the stations are not 100% accurate, and that the information that I got are from sources linked in the description down below. I drew the lines and placed the markers myself. For now, we'll cover the Chicago L, now known as the CTA, one more iconic place to start than the downtown loop, aka the Union Loop. Starting with the oldest station, 5th and Lake, located at the intersection of Wells and Lake Street. Wells was then known as 5th Avenue. So, the north section of the loop here consists of these three stations, 5th Lake, Clark Lake, and State Lake. Were built before the rest of the loop by the Lake Street Elevated. They were completed on September 22nd, 1895. Once the loop was complete, parts of the station here were removed until it was no more on December 17th, 1899, making it the third shortest lived station in the Chicago L. The station that replaced it, or rather was the successor of it, was Randolph Wells. We'll get to that in a bit later. In the early stages of the loop, there were three stations on each side. On the north side, we obviously have these three here. On the east side, we'd have Randolph, Madison, Adams. Same thing on the west side, except with Quincy here. And on the south side with LaSalle, Dearborn, and State Van Buren. Well, once the 5th and Lake Station got removed, then 11 remained, and until 1949, where this station had been closed, it had been 2 on this side, 2 on this side, and 3 on this side, and 3 on this side. Until the 1980s, where CTA had plans to consolidate the Randolph Wabash, Madison Wabash, along with the Randolph Wells and Madison Wells, into the Washington Wabash and Washington Wells, respectively. Presumably to make it more convenient to have simply 2 stops on each side of the loop. And so the construction began in the 1990s here, with the Randolph Wells and Madison Wells being consolidated into the Washington Wells station. And in 1995, almost a century of existence, these 2 stations were closed and replaced with the now existing Washington Wells station. However, the Randolph Wells station, or rather platforms, remain today as you can see them when going into the loop from this intersection here, where the platforms are used to store equipment. 30 years later, it'd be the Wabash side to get the consolidation on the north side, where the Madison Wabash station was closed and demolished first, and then once the Washington Wabash station was completed, the Randolph Wabash closed 2 years later in 2017. Now, the loop is how it is, with just 2 stations on each side. However, there's one station I haven't yet to talk about, and that is the Dearborn Van Buren station here. Located right here between the LaSalle and State Van Buren. These 3 stations were initially separate, but then were later lengthened to merge with each other into one large set of platforms in 1930. However, in 1949, trains had no longer stopped to Dearborn Van Buren, and has basically remained abandoned until 1968, where a supposed gas leak in this area here had caused an explosion, which damaged some of the tracks and the platforms here, which prompted the removal of all the infrastructure here except the tracks. Today, only this little station house here remains as the auxiliary exit for the now Harold Washington Library. Before we end the video, there's one more step I want to talk about, and that is Washington State. Washington State was part of the continuous platform going from Lake to Jackson on the now red line, but had closed for reason. I bring this one up considering how it's within the loop and there's some history behind it, especially with the project known as Block 37, an initiative done by CTA to try and create a so-called superstation within this area here, where express trains would run from here to O'Hare via the Blue Line and to Midway via the Orange Line. We were also planning to have underground shops through the Pedway, which is Chicago's underground walkway within this area. Construction had started in 2005, but in the late 2000s, lack of funding had basically killed the project. And so Block 37 was not going to be a reality. However, to do construction on what was then going to be Block 37, they had to close the Washington section of the whole platform here and basically blocked off access to it. But since it never came to be, CTA had restored the platforms in this section here, but service has yet to return ever since. This is the only part where this is probably the only station where you can visit here without trespassing or so. There's no access to the mezzanine, however, as the entrances from the platform and from the streets have been sealed. And with that, we arrived at the end of the video. Tune in next time where I discuss the first ever marks of the Chicago L, the shortest lived stop in the history of the Chicago L, and Chicago's former second loop. Before you disembark, please like and subscribe. It costs nothing for you and it helps me out. Until then, this is a Chicago Rail fan, departing and signing out.